What is up? What's good? I've been literally going, making moves, living life, handling a lot of things. But we got yet another podcast on tap. It's brytaypodcast, back at it again. I hope everyone's doing well on this fine Saturday afternoon for me. Maybe morning, evening, or daytime or night, however you may be listening or when you may be listening in on the show. Excuse me. I do have a few network tips that I've been given, so I'm going to be utilizing those as time progresses. Shout out to that individual. That was kind of a clutch move, so I'll kind of be working with that and figuring that out over the next couple of weeks. But if you are listening, I do need to add one small thing, which I'll be sure to add once the podcast officially is uploaded, regarding the topics that are in question, because I know usually I'll have that ready for everyone to kind of see, okay, here's what we're talking about, here's what we're getting into, which I don't have it on this one. But nonetheless, we move forward, we progress, we digress, we move, we let it be what it is. But anywho, a lot of topics to get into. I'm gonna just let them kind of just fly, and we're gonna make this work. First topic, of course, we are about a week away from Super Bowl 51, and I'm going to go ahead and let y'all know now. I apologize, there may be a couple of coughs, but what I'm probably going to do is just do the cheat code, and of course phone rings, but no big deal, we just keep on going. Super Bowl 51 is around the corner, so we are literally a week away from a couple of teams going head to head between the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. There aren't any alleged bad moves that New England has done this year, but a lot of people are kind of going against New England because they look at it as Tom Brady always is in the Super Bowl. But I mean, it's not his fault that his division sucks. So I always say that every time I talk about their gameplay or how they're acknowledged or viewed in the eye of the media, I guess you can say. I'm kind of making a pick, but not making a pick, but I'm also just kind of being honest. I truly would have to say, if there was anyone that I had to kind of pick, if I had to pick between the two, I mean, Atlanta has the best offense, but Tom Brady is literally known for making a lot of John Does look like great superstars. So that's something you kind of have to factor in when picking against him. I really don't want to make a score prediction because it's been so lopsided with the way he's been playing, how football turns out. But if I had to take a blind pick, I would say I'm going for Atlanta. Plain and simple, only because it's kind of a redemption for us, especially with Carolina losing last year to Denver the way they did. So that's my pick for that. If you have any picks or have any options or views of who you think may be winning the Super Bowl this year, by all means, send them my way. brytaypodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear some input and feedback. And that's where that will be viewed for me. And since we are moving forward, I'm going to kind of move a little backward, because two games that led up to the Super Bowl matchup were not the best of games by the participants involved. Atlanta played against Green Bay, and it wasn't really the greatest matchup. Atlanta pretty much had the game down from the beginning. I mean, Matt Ryan had 4 touchdowns. Granted, Rodgers had 3, but what helped Ryan too was that he did have a rushing touchdown from his running back. Julio Jones had a pretty strong breakout game. He had 2 touchdowns. He averaged 20 yards a catch, so it was kind of just his night, or his game plan. Rodgers, I think Rodgers got ruffled, definitely got his feathers ruffled in his game. That was the best way to put it. I will be very direct in saying this, because it was kind of like that was just the kind of weekend it was. I really didn't watch a lot of football, but I mean, between reading stats, getting stories, and kind of keeping tabs on what was what, it was kind of either predicted to go exceptionally well or horribly wrong. And I know for me, most cases, as with anybody, if you ever do or don't miss, if you miss an event and you feel like you missed something or didn't catch anything, all you have to do is go to social media and you pretty much know the whole story before it even happened. So that was kind of how I got a lot of what occurred over the last weekend with football, and it's just the way it is. We have on the AFC side, Pittsburgh lost 36-7, lost 17. They had 17 points. New England had 36. Big Ben didn't have the greatest game. Le'Veon Bell played a very brief game. He kind of shouldn't have been playing. That story was presented at a certain point. Antonio Brown, to say what I was saying, was Antonio Brown was somewhat of a no-show, and that's just kind of how it went. LeGarrette Blount had a pretty basic game for New England, but he, did his job. He got a touchdown. Tom Brady, their main goal, literally, no pun intended, is to keep him upright. As long as he's standing and able to throw, there aren't really going to be too many problems involved with him or his gameplay. So those were my NFL stories. Like I said, I think the toughest thing I'm looking at not for the All-Star game, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, for the Super Bowl this year is that they hopefully learned from last year. Because last year, they hopefully learned from last year regarding the commercials. I'm brain cells are gone and they'll be back soon. Now, honestly, the commercials last year were not the best. Hopefully they'll get it improved this year. All we can do is just wait and see and kind of hope for the best. So jumping away from NFL, we're going to go into a little bit of basketball. And I was able to find out, because it was stories that kind of leaked initially, and then it was kind of not told, but eventually it was fully told. And it was confirmed the East and West reserves for the All-Star game. Those individuals for the East, you have Paul George, Kevin Love, Kyle Lowry, Paul Millsap, Isaiah Thomas, Kemba Walker, and John Wall. And if I do recall correctly, this is Isaiah's second, and this is Kemba's first. I know Paul Millsap, this should be his second. So that was a pretty good call out and choosing for them. Let's see. Just make sure I'm getting any bit of information that has occurred. This is Kemba Walker's first All-Star, and I definitely feel as though he's deserving of it. Paul George will probably have a pretty good show out coming off the bench. The Western reserves, you have DeMarcus Cousins, Mark Gasol, Draymond Green, Gordon Hayward, DeAndre Jordan, Klay Thompson, and Russell Westbrook. Memory serves me correct, this is Hayward's first, DeAndre Jordan's first, and I think Draymond Green's first, actually. I don't believe, I may be wrong, I feel like he may have played last year. But nonetheless, for Gordon Hayward, especially playing in Utah has been kind of like the somber sleeping giant of the West, and it's, they haven't really been having the best of the season, but they've, made what they got work. They have a decent amount of veterans, but a solid young core in Utah. So DeAndre Jordan, it's good that he's making it. Didn't see it. It was a very slim chance Blake was going to make it because he really hasn't been playing much. He's been out for a while. Thankfully, they got it right. Good thing was Russell Westbrook was entered in as a choice, because I know there was a lot of hoopla behind that, because they thought it didn't make sense. Couple of snubs, I would say, if anyone to kind of like not leave off the list is not having. I always never understand how it works, but Damian Lillard gets little to no love in the West, and I feel like he has to. The only way that he'll really get an All-Star ballot is he has to actually start, because it's not very often that he gets in based on the coaches, which always never ceases to amaze me. I would, believe it or not, I would say LaMarcus Aldridge should get a spot, because the Spurs have been very under the radar at the 2 seed in the West. But it's gonna be. All-Star Game is kind of just for it's somewhat of a celebrity show, but it's that one moment that you kind of get a couple of guys, that to get a little bit of a break time and just kind of chill for a little bit. So for those of you who are keeping score, and this is going to be relevant to my last topic that I'm not going to talk about right now, but the Golden State Warriors did actually get 4 players into the All-Star game. And we have had that happen quite a few times. And like I said, I don't want to jump too far ahead with that one. I want to save that as my last topic for a reason, because that's going to probably be somewhat of an opinion-based story, and I'll explain why at that point. So moving forward, and I'm sorry, Cleveland has their big 3 in with Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James. I was like, wait, I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't know who the third person is. But yeah, LeBron, Irving, and Love all have made it, and it's, it's deserving. I mean, they're going to all kind of shine and do their part. Steve Kerr was noted to present, since he is coaching the West, that he's likely going to run all 4 of his guys at one time, kind of using that as an opportunity to, find ways of coming up with a bit of an offensive flow. So my next topic, and I'm kind of jumping away from that a little bit, because All-Star break is All-Star break. It's like, it happens, it comes, it goes, and we're done. But the trade rumor mill is slightly buzzing, because Carmelo Anthony wants, it's being said without being said, he wants out of New York. He has a infamous part of his contract known as a no trade clause, which means unless he's waived and then traded, that's pretty much about the only way he's gonna leave that team. So I think, as memory serves me, there are 3 players in the NBA who have this no trade clause. They are Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, and Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk likely is going to retire as a Maverick. LeBron, I mean, this is his 14th year, 14th year. So he's probably, he's got a few years left, but I mean, for him, if anything, I mean, he hasn't really lost his step over the years, especially from to win the championship, 12 years down the line, or 13 years down the line. So, but yeah, we're not talking about any of those 2. We're talking about Carmelo. Spinning back to the main topic, but it looks as though Carmelo is in a funny predicament, because he can't, I ain't gonna say he can't, but the initial reports were he was going to Cleveland for Kevin Love. That trade rumor kind of came and went and never happened. It looks like now the Knicks and the Clippers are involved in trying to make a trade, but they'll need a third team, because they probably want to have enough pieces in place to make the move occur. Because from what's being stated, the Clippers are not giving up any of their big 3. Chris Paul, is staying. Blake Griffin will stay, and DeAndre Jordan will stay. It's a very odd scenario, but you never know. And for whatever reason, Carmelo, and I have the story that I have up, because this was actually wrote this morning, is that Carmelo feels that all of this going on has become mentally draining for him. It's so much that he has to deal with involving this scenario where you put yourself in that position. So you got what you got, and here we are. And it's not like it's not that I don't care, and it's not that I don't have pity, because believe me, I do. I'm human. I'm not gonna act like no athlete is perfect, or athletes are human just like everybody else is. So I truly, hope it comes together for him in regards as to what he's trying to get done. But the toughest thing about it is it's not easy when you're on a team that you're the go-to guy, but you don't. It's like he's the go-to guy, but he doesn't want to be the go-to guy. But you went there kind of in that place. And I mean, it's been tough. It's been a tough road for Melo, because when he was in Denver, it was the same way. Denver, he was the go-to guy. He had AI for a while, but it was like it was his team, but he really didn't want the team. And that's why the New York move was the New York move made sense at the time, because he was in the Garden. As far as on the West Coast, I mean, he was in Denver, but to play in LA, that's, I mean, you get a lot of perks with playing in LA, and it's all for marketing and all for branding. So I just wanted to bring that topic up because I have seen that kind of floating around. Whether he actually goes anywhere, we have to see, because in a couple of weeks the trade deadline does arrive, and you'll find out from there whether he'll have a new home or he'll still be a Knickerbocker, for those who are retro and throwback. So jumping away from basketball, like I said, I'll chip back into the basketball topic for a little bit, but I wanted to kind of throw a little bit of a wild card first, and then kind of mix it up and let it be what it is. So, of course, as of right now, we have our soccer du jour, known as the Premier League, happening. And as of right now, Chelsea is ahead by 8 points with 55 points. I've mentioned this on a podcast before. If you want to refer back to it, you're welcome to. But basically, with soccer games being played, you win, you get 3 points. You draw, you get 1 point. You lose, you don't get any points. You want to have points progress you higher up the standings, because you'd rather be in the upper echelon than in the lower. Like, if you're in the middle, it's a decent place. You may get certain tournaments that you can be a part of when it's the Premier League involved. But the worst place to be, as anybody knows, is in the bottom four, aka the relegation zone. It's an odd season this year because last year you had, of all teams, Leicester City won the cup last year, won the Premier League Cup. So for them to be 15th this year, something changed. And I don't know what it is. I just know something changed. But as far as the top five, well, actually top six. The top six, literally there's a 14-point gap between 1 and 6. So it can take a loss, it can take a win, a few wins here and there to just kind of pick up the pace and be right on track with getting a step closer to winning the cup. But right now, like I said, Chelsea's first, Arsenal is second, Tottenham is third. That was the last team Chelsea lost to. Currently, Liverpool is fourth, Man City 5, and Man U 6. Man U's actually been low key playing pretty good with their new lineup between Zlatan, Rooney, Pogba. They've been playing very good ball. So I've been keeping up with them pretty decent. Liverpool, I'm always keeping an eye on them once in a while, especially being rivals. Boy may or may not be listening, but Mark, if y'all listening, happy birthday. Well, happy belated birthday now. I'm going to still try to make it to the shindig tonight, see what life does for me or doesn't do for me. So just wanted to at least make that mention. Like I said, the rest of the league is kind of trail mix, pick and choose, push and pull, how you want to see. I've seen Chelsea winning, but I've had years. I know one year Chelsea had a good lead, and crazy things can happen where you just don't know how the season can end. So you just don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. So going away from soccer and briefly away from sports, I wanted to try something out a little different. I was going to talk about this in my last podcast, but I never got to doing it. And I thought this week's podcast would probably be the best one to do it for, by talking about, I'm doing what's called an artist spotlight, which basically you take an artist who, was known in his heyday, his or her heyday, in this case it's him, but known in their heyday for, what music they produced, what kind of got them going, their background, just different songs, things of that sort. So my artist spotlight this week is Curtis Mayfield. And the reason believe it or not, I chose Curtis Mayfield is because there are a lot of artists who have sampled so many songs from him. One song I always think about because it just stands out to me is These Are the Makings of You. And the reason it does is because I can remember listening to the Monica version of it, and I'm like, I think I hadn't even heard the song at that time, but it was a legit sample, but it just blended in and it came together at the right time. So a lot of his known hit singles are She's a Gypsy Woman. So he has Gypsy Woman. He was a leader, and I'm sorry, before I go into that part, he was known as the leader of the group, the Impressions. If you want to get some old school music, knowledge check out the Impressions. You'll get a decent amount of information about how that all got started. But yeah, there was the Gypsy Woman, It's Alright, People Get Ready, Freddie's Dead. Superfly is always the one that anytime, if you ever want to take somebody to a true 70s and 80s moment, matter of fact, the legit 70s moment, play Superfly. Superfly will make you think of like true music in its form and just how it was valued and just was on time on so many levels. So it's just been a good, like he did a good amount of music, and I guess I'm talking about him too. And this is me learning and me acknowledging, because it's just how I am with music. And I think this is kind of going to be my plan this year and I'll tell everybody because it's a couple of days away. A lot of people don't know. I usually like to do, for Black History Month, I'll do different, famous inventions or famous things that blacks have been a part of. I believe last year I did music. If I didn't, I did writers. I did something between those two. I would like to do music this year, but if I did music last year, then I'm going to do writers this year. But I wanted to, Curtis Mayfield is one I always think about. Curtis Mayfield passed in December, the day after Christmas, in 99 at the age of 57. He was, a very... he went through a tough, downward spiral, especially with music. His music covered its span, but as music changes, sometimes artists kind of like, hey, this is what I'm working with, and this is what I choose to do. But yeah, that's kind of my artist spotlight about him. I probably have a lot of people who probably listen like, well, you left out a lot of things, but first time, still learning, researching. Bear with me making it work. So that was my artist spotlight. If you do have any artists you would suggest doing for artist spotlight, please share them, and I will definitely add them to the mix, because I like to kind of be fair and open to who I talk about when it comes to doing a section on known as such. Next topic relates to, and this is, it's a topic, but it's not a topic. And the only reason I say it's not a topic is because it's whenever you have I'll give you the backstory first. The Nintendo Switch was announced, like the specs, the details, the release date, everything was kind of broken down to us a couple of weeks ago on Nintendo's. Nintendo did theirs, IG, and a lot of companies talked about what was coming for Nintendo. Great things ahead, love it, looking forward to it. Well, Japan is getting ahead of the game because, of course, when it comes out there, getting the system is going to be tough. But what they've done is fans are already getting in line. Fans were getting in line last week to secure a pre-order for the console. And they showed what we consider to be queues or lines of different consoles. Different locations of where the system was going to be sold. And from the looks of it, it's literally, you got lines for days at different places of just folks ready to go ahead and get their Nintendo Switch. And then it was kind of, and of course, in the tradition of international news, they had to be petty like anybody else would be, and they posted a picture of when the Xbox One released, or when they did their pre-release, and literally there was nobody in line. But then too, you also have to keep in mind, Xbox and PlayStation 4 isn't one of their stronger systems. That's kind of an American-based system to some degree. And other countries have them, and they play them as well, but we're the ones who, when they come out, for a new system, between pre-orders or actual release of systems, we'll wait. We waited, folks waited for Xbox Ones and PS4s because that was kind of a big deal at the time. But yeah, just seeing these lines, it's so crazy because it was like one guy was like, "Good morning, I'm 10th in line for Switch reservations at Yobodashi Camera in Akihabara." Now, mind you, this is not the system. This is just to pre-order the system and to make sure you have your pre-order in so that when the system releases on March 3rd, you'll have one. You would be surprised. But yeah, I wanted to do that as a unique story, and I think the reason I like this story too, because of how random it is just the mere fact that there's a point where they show people waiting in line for the Nintendo system, and the line is going as far back as the Sega store. And I was like, if you don't call that building the brand, and if you don't call that like a level of contradiction, I don't know what is. Especially with Sega. Sega had to learn the hard way and look their wounds and realize consoles was just not in the cards for them. So they took the just platform route and just make games for systems, because you can't really go wrong too much with most games, I've kind of seen and acknowledged. So going from the Japan story and my gaming story, I've done my music, done my gaming. Like I said, I had one more sports story I wanted to do, and I'm doing this to kind of talk about an idea someone gave me, and I'm going to give my input about it. Well, as I do, I'm going to tell you about what this story entails. So currently, as of this year, because this is including this year, you have, let me make sure I get the correct count. 3, 6. You have 8 teams who have had 4 All-Star players go to the NBA All-Star game from that team. If you go back to your old school, you had the 62 Celtics, had the 75 Celtics, you had the 83 76ers. Now you didn't have it for about 15 years until the LA Lakers did it with Kobe, Shaq, Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones. 06 Pistons with their squad. Now, I will admit, and I'm probably going to be catch a lot of heat for this, I think the 06 Pistons could have been the only team to achieve what I'm about to inquire about, and I'll go over that in a moment. You had the 2011 Celtics with Rondo, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and KG. 2015 Hawks with Horford, Korver, Kyle Korver, Millsap, Jeff Teague. Korver ended up coming in as a replacement for Wade, but I mean, it still follows the protocol, so it doesn't matter. And this year you had the Golden State Warriors with Steph, KD, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. So the question that was presented is, will we ever see a point that 5 starters or 5 players from an NBA team make an All-Star appearance in the same year? My answer is no, but I'm going to say no solely because the only way that would happen, and someone brought this to my attention, and I wish he was on this. I'm still working to get that to happen. I got somebody that I really want to have this podcast conversation with, because he would probably literally rip me a new one about this. The only way you would be able to do it, because he brought it to my attention, is if you expand the rosters for the All-Star game from 12 to 15. Now, if you extend it to 15, yes, you could get a starting 5 for a team to go based on who's starting, based on who comes off the bench. You could have, because a lot of times, and I'll say this, and I want to point this out because it was addressed last week, but it wasn't addressed last week. There was an actual possibility that Golden State could have had 5 players start, but based on the players and the media jumping in to intervene, well, not intervene, but to give their input on who the starter should be, Zaza Pachulia didn't start. But Zaza Pachulia technically was a starter based on the votes. So if you had Pachulia start, you had Durant start, you had Steph Curry starting, and then you got Draymond Green and Klay Thompson coming off the bench. There's your 5 right there. The only other team that I see that had a close chance of doing that would have been the '06 Pistons, and that was Tayshaun. Tayshaun Prince was an all-star, but Tayshaun Prince didn't get all-star credibility in the NBA because of it. The all-star game is a unique scenario, and I'll explain why regarding that. The Spurs, for example, the San Antonio Spurs, great team. Kawhi Leonard, great player. But Kawhi Leonard is he's an all-star based on his performance, and he makes it based on votes. But as far as how the game flows and how he is as a personality, personality-wise, it's unique to see pan out. But the all-star game too has changed over decades. Because at one time you had all-star players who really played and really were into it and would give their effort. Now it's, hey, we're getting this guy in. I want to say Duncan made it last year. For instance, Duncan has had double digits in, he's made at least 14 or 15 All-Star appearances. I might be a little off, but he's made quite a fair share of All-Star appearances. Tim Duncan is a very basic player, but he makes it to the All-Star game every year because he's an All-Star. Whether it's as a starter, whether it's as a bench player, whatever the case may be. So I personally don't see a starting five going to the All-Star game anytime soon. And I almost can stretch it in saying, even if you were to push it with having it. And the only reason I realistically don't see it is because, yes, some teams have good players who play, but the truth of the matter is, it's the All-Star game. I mean, if you do that, here's how you have to look at it, and this is how I'm condensing this. And I know the podcast probably just froze up, but I'm waiting for it to come back. If it's hearing everything, I would be so grand. If it's not, I'd be very upset because this is one of my kinks about using web-based things. It's probably going to come back to it at some that are not from that team being able to make the All-Star game. Is it doable? Yes. Would you have a fair shake on it? I'm not sure. I think that's what that kind of is where my question and concern process comes into play. But you never know. It's possible, but I just don't see it right now. And even having said the whole change from 12 to 15, with 15 players on one team, 10 guys in the East, and you have how many teams in the East that probably could have at least another player get in, but instead of them not getting in, you have a 5 that's on the team. Just something to think about. So I'm kind of going to end it there. I really hope that the portion of what I just stated is going to be in the podcast, because I closed some things not thinking when I was doing it, but that's me being me, and I don't think about stuff sometimes. But I hope everyone is enjoying the podcast and enjoying the episodes. Like I said, I will be working more and more on getting better branding, better push with this, because this is literally my baby now. Like, I've made it my goal and my objective to put as much effort as I can into getting good shows of good quality to my listeners. Whether it's me sitting upright and being focused, or me being relaxed like I am right now, you still really can't tell, because I'm just kind of chill. Most times, anybody who knows me knows I'm usually pretty chill with doing stuff anyway. But I am pretty chill now because I'm just in my normal chill state. So with that being said, like I said, check me out on Facebook, brytaypodcast, on Twitter at brytaypodcast, on Snapchat, brytay82. My Snapchat mostly now has been promoting my blog and my podcast. So I don't really do. I do personal posts, but anybody who knows, personal posts are just kind of gonna be snap of the whim and how I feel. Let's see, did I miss anything? If you're listening to the show on Spreaker, but I would love if you get on iTunes, search me up. Brytay Podcast is out there, and I'm getting shows pushed every week. If you have topics or conversations you want me to do, other than this simple everyday sports stuff, I don't mind, because I know it's like a lot. But all in all, y'all be good, stay blessed. Hope everyone enjoys their Saturday, their weekend. And until next time, this is Brytay Podcast, aka BT, signing out. Peace.